Chapter 1. The chill of the autumn night wrapped around the German student like a shroud, whispering secrets of the darkened streets of Paris. He walked with a heavy heart, his mind consumed by visions of the woman he had lost, the beautiful but tragic figure whose laughter once filled the air with warmth. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow on the cobblestones, a silent witness to the sorrow that clung to him like an unwelcome specter. As he wandered aimlessly, the memories of her haunted him. He could almost hear her voice, a dulcet melody that echoed through the alleys. The townsfolk had warned him of the dangers that lurked in the shadows, tales of madness and despair that had claimed the souls of many. But he dismissed their fears, believing that love could conquer all, even death. His footsteps led him to a desolate tavern where the air was thick with the scent of stale ale and forgotten dreams. He pushed open the door, the creak of the hinges a harbinger of the darkness within. The flickering candlelight revealed a handful of patrons, their faces gaunt and haunted, eyes sunken deep into their skulls. They exchanged glances, whispers of pity and fear swirling like smoke around him. "Lost something, eh?" one man muttered, his voice slurred by drink. "Or someone?" The student ignored him, his heart heavy with grief. He ordered a drink, the bitter liquid burning a path down his throat, momentarily numbing the ache in his chest. As he sat alone at the bar, he caught sight of a figure in the corner. A woman cloaked in shadows, her face obscured, but her presence magnetic. She seemed to beckon him with a slight movement, her lips curling into a smile that sent shivers coursing through him. "Come closer," she whispered, her voice like silk against the rough edges of his despair. Compelled, he rose and approached her. The tavern faded away, the raucous laughter and drunken brawls dissolving into a dull roar. She looked up at him, her eyes pools of darkness that seemed to draw him in. He could feel the weight of her gaze, the intensity of her sorrow mirroring his. "I know why you're here," she said, a hint of sadness lacing her words. "You seek the one who was taken from you." He nodded, the lump in his throat growing heavier. "But she is gone, lost to the shadows." "Perhaps not," she replied, her voice dripping with an unsettling sweetness. "What if I told you that I could bring her back?" His heart raced at the thought, hope flaring momentarily before the dread settled back in. "At what cost?" "Nothing that you cannot bear," she assured him, her smile widening, revealing teeth that glinted like knives. "But you must be willing to embrace the darkness." He hesitated, but the longing to see her again overpowered the fear clawing at his insides. "I will do anything." "Then follow me," she said, rising from her seat and leading him through the back door of the tavern. The air outside was thick with fog, swirling around them like a living entity. She moved with a grace that was both alluring and terrifying, guiding him down narrow alleys until they reached a secluded courtyard, the moonlight barely penetrating the gloom. In the center of the courtyard stood a stone altar, covered in moss and grime. Candles flickered around it, their flames dancing like restless spirits. The woman turned to him, her expression now serious, her eyes glimmering with an otherworldly light. "Place your hands upon the altar," she instructed, her voice low and hypnotic, "and speak her name." With trembling hands, he approached the altar, the cold stone sending chills up his spine. "Elena," he whispered, the name reverberating in the stillness. The moment the syllables left his lips, a tremor ran through the ground beneath him, a sinister energy pulsing in the air. "Now focus on her," the woman urged, her voice a soft caress. "Think of all that you shared, the love that transcends even death." He closed his eyes, the memories flooding his mind. Her laughter, her touch, the way she had made the world feel alive. But as he focused, a darkness began to creep into his thoughts, a nagging doubt that clawed at his conscience. "Is this truly what I want?" he murmured, uncertainty taking root in his heart. The woman stepped closer, her breath cool against his ear. "Do not falter. You have come too far to turn back now." Just as he was about to relent, a chilling wind swept through the courtyard, extinguishing the candles in an instant. The atmosphere shifted, the air thickening with malevolence. He opened his eyes, and what he saw sent his blood running cold. Chapter 2. Elena stood before him, but not as he remembered. Her once vibrant skin was now a sickly pallor, her beautiful features twisted in a grotesque semblance of life. Her hair hung in matted clumps, eyes hollow and devoid of warmth. The very essence of her soul seemed to be trapped in a macabre state of limbo. "Help me," she rasped, her voice barely above a whisper, a haunting echo that twisted his heart. "I'm so cold, so lost." "No," he gasped, stepping back in horror. "This isn't what I wanted." "Love knows no bounds, my dear," the woman behind him crooned, her smile widening, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. "But sometimes it brings forth the darkest of consequences." He turned to confront her, but the world around him warped, the courtyard dissolving into a swirling darkness, the very ground beneath his feet shifting like sand. The shadows writhed, tendrils of darkness reaching out to ensnare him, pulling him closer to the altar. "Let her go!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. "This isn't her!" "Is it not?" the woman taunted, her voice echoing through the void. "It is a piece of her soul, a fragment of the love you once shared, but now she belongs to the night." Elena's form flickered, her expression a mixture of pain and longing. "Help me, please." Torn between love and terror, the student felt the weight of his choices crashing down upon him. "I can't," he cried, his voice raw with anguish. "This isn't what love is." The darkness only laughed, a cacophony of despair that reverberated through his very being. The shadows coiled tighter around him, their grip unyielding. He could feel the cold seep into his bones, the chill of death settling over him like a funeral shroud. "Join us," the woman hissed, her eyes glinting with sadistic glee. "Embrace the darkness. Embrace your love for her." "No, I refuse." He fought against the encroaching shadows, desperation fueling his struggle, but they only tightened their hold, dragging him closer to the altar, to the grotesque mockery of the woman he had once adored. "Your love was never enough," the woman whispered, her voice dripping with malice. "You should have accepted the inevitable." With a final surge of will, he grasped for the remnants of his humanity, his voice rising in defiance. "I will not be a part of this." But it was too late. The shadows surged forward, engulfing him in a torrent of darkness. He could feel the fragments of his soul being ripped apart, the love he had clung to twisting into something horrific. He screamed, the sound swallowed by the void, a cacophony of despair that echoed into eternity. Chapter 3. The tavern lay silent, the patrons lost in their own misery, unaware of the tragedy unfolding just outside. The woman stood alone in the courtyard, her eyes gleaming with triumph as she surveyed the remnants of their encounter. The altar was now stained with the essence of the student, a dark offering to the shadows that lingered just beyond the veil of reality. Elena's hollow eyes gazed into the abyss, a silent testament to the darkness that they had both embraced. "Another soul claimed," the woman murmured, her voice a sinister lullaby. "Another love twisted into the void." As she turned to leave, the shadows whispered around her, a symphony of lost hopes and shattered dreams. The night stretched on, an eternal darkness that swallowed everything in its path, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of despair. In the distance, the moon hung low, a cold observer of the horrors that unfolded beneath its gaze. It illuminated the cobblestones once more, the shadows dancing in a sinister waltz, a reminder that love, in its purest form, could be the most dangerous of all. And in the silence that followed, the world continued on, oblivious to the darkness that lurked just beyond the light, waiting patiently for the next soul to fall.